What's going on, guys? Brad Messersmith here with Slurv.com, bringing you another GPP strategy video for the upcoming US Open. We're headed to Oakmont Country Club this week, which is going to be a very difficult challenge for these guys. The winner in 2007 was Angel Cabrera, which was also hosted at Oakmont, and the winning score was 5 over par, I believe, 4 or 5 over par. So we're almost certainly going to see the winner this week be over par again. There's no trees or water on this course, according to several different reports. However, there's over 200 plus bunkers, very punishing rough. So we're going to be looking at some accuracy and proximity type stats. A little bit concerned about guys who aren't going to be accurate off the tee and have no way of making up for that. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into it. But just something worth mentioning, we really want to be targeting guys who aren't going to be making big numbers. Par is going to be a good thing on this course, whereas there's not many birdies out there to make up for an 8 or for a triple or a double. So we're looking for guys who are going to stay out of trouble and who are going to really manage the game well for 4 rounds. So let's get right into it. I have a couple of guys I want to touch on this week, and the first one, I think it's worth mentioning. You can pick any of the top guys. I think they all have really good upside, really good chance to win. The one case I do want to make is there, I think, is a strong case for fading Rory at 12,000. His sand save percentage is 50%, which is 100th on tour. Not a really great sand save percentage, which concerns me a lot on a course that's going to be very, very difficult in terms of bunker play and scrambling. On top of that, Rory doesn't really have very great proximity stats. He's ranked a little bit better than 50th from 175 and out. But anywhere inside of 175, Rory is outside of the top 50, which concerns me for somebody who's 12,000, who's priced at 12,000. You know, with those types of proximity stats on a course that's a little bit shorter, as the yardage ranges get shorter for Rory's approaches, he gets worse. So that leaves me pretty well concerned enough to stay off of Rory. And you know, the other thing is he has a tendency to make big numbers. He'll shoot a 77 on a Saturday and then turn around and shoot a 63 on Sunday to backdoor top 10. At least recently, that's what he's done. And I just don't think there's enough birdies on this course for him to make up for deficient play. And I think with his tendency to make big numbers, I think he's going to count himself out early, and I don't think he'll ever really be in contention in the way that we're looking for a guy at 12,000. In terms of the other top guys, I think you can flip a coin. I think there's a lot of good cases to be made for both Jordan Spieth or Jason Day, and there's also some consideration into whether you want to fade all 3 of these guys in such a stacked event. I don't think I'll be fading all 3. Most likely I'll land on Jason Day, pending what I think his ownership is going to be. But for right now, I haven't really decided. So a couple other guys I want to touch on. The next one is Justin Rose at 10,500. Justin Rose, coming off a back injury, should be only 5 to 7% owned, which I think is a huge advantage for us. I think you can get Justin Rose into your lineups at 20% clip. You know, if you own 20% of Justin Rose, you're going to be pretty well overweight compared to the field. With him coming off the back injury, he was 10th at the 2007 Oakmont US Open, so he has some course history here that works really well for him. Just kind of on the surface, his game fits the course really well for a lot of the same reasons we talked about in the intro. He's coming off the back injury. He actually made it out to Wentworth for the BMW Championship anyways. He said in some interviews that if he was feeling okay, he was going to try and get out there. He obviously wasn't going to play, but he was going to go out there and kind of pay tribute to the event. And he made it on the broadcast and was, you know, there were photos of him walking around at BMW. So he's feeling okay. Another quote that I think is relevant, he said, "I want to be 100% fit, ready, and focused for the U.S. Open." That was when he first announced he had an injury. So I think even when he first announced that he was injured and withdrew from the BMW, I think he was already kind of thinking about the U.S. Open as his return. So, you know, and then the last thing, he tweeted out fairly recently pictures of him doing medicine ball workouts and swinging the club, and so he's in the gym. I'm really not too concerned about his back injury. I think more likely what happened was he had kind of a minor tweak and wanted to just give it some rest before the U.S. Open. I expect that if he does start, I think he'll be able to go all 4 rounds. Only concern I have is whether or not he'll be able to come out after a month off and play his A game. But you know, at 5 to 7% ownership, I think you take him something like 15% and go overweight on the field, and I think he has really, really good upside. And we have the opportunity to get him at really low ownership this week when, based on all the research I'm doing, I'm not super concerned about his injury. So I think there's some good potential for upside there. The next guy I want to touch on is Bubba Watson at 9,500. We talked about in the opening, we talked about accuracy off the tee. Obviously, that's a concern with Bubba Watson. However, the difference between Bubba Watson and most typical bombers is that his accuracy or his proximity stats are elite, some of the best in the world. So for me, I sort of envision Bubba Watson playing a game on a course with no trees and no water, where he is just bombing the ball off the tee and correcting it and making up for missed fairways by having a wedge into the green and you know, showing off that elite proximity stat. So obviously there's still a little bit of concern with his inaccuracies off the tee, and Bubba also has a tendency to kind of get those big numbers, but you know, despite his inaccuracies off the tee, he actually has really good green and regulation numbers. So even on easy courses, even on courses with trees and everything else, his inaccuracies off the tee haven't caused him to miss greens very often. So I like that about him. And he also has some really good course history here. He placed 5th at the 2007 U.S. Open with incredibly difficult conditions there. So like I said, I think Bubba Watson has it in his game to kind of make up for his inaccuracies off the tee. And I think that sort of portrayal of Bubba Watson as just a bomber who doesn't hit fairways, I think will keep him a little bit under-owned in terms of ownership percentage. So I like him as a GPP option this week, and certainly he has the upside to pay off his $9,500 salary. Next guy I want to touch on is Zach Johnson at 7,800. I think at 7,800, Zach Johnson is one of the guys who can actually win. I think, you know, the likelihood of that happening is not great, but I think he certainly is a guy who could end up in the winner's circle on Sunday. He's got all the aspects to his game that we're looking for. He's accurate off the tee. He's a really kind of consistent game manager, grinder. Doesn't really shoot high numbers very often at all. And his tee to green and proximity stats are good. So look for Zach Johnson at 7,800 to really be a good value play at 7,800. Certainly has some good upside as well for GPPs. Next guy I want to touch on is Bill Haas at 6,900. He plays really well on big stages. He had a 25th at the Masters, 10th at a WGC event earlier this year. He has had a second place finish this year. I believe it was at the Valspar, if I'm not mistaken. He's also really accurate off the tee. He's got high green and regulation, good scrambler, projects really well for me in my statistical model. And little known fact, Bill Haas actually has top 25 or better in almost half of his events this year. 7 out of 14 events, he's top 25 or better. So, you know, at 6,900, that's plenty of upside for me. I think that if he can find a way to get inside the top 25 at 6,900, we're pretty happy with that. And, you know, his sort of outlook as a player projects really well for this course, kind of fits the mold. And for that reason, I'll be rostering Bill Haas quite a bit. And I don't know that his ownership is going to be super low, but I don't think it'll be incredibly high either. I don't think he'll be a super popular pick either. The last guy I want to talk on is more of kind of a GPP flyer at 6,100, AndrewBeef Johnston. He is a staple on the Euro Tour, really popular among fans. He's kind of he's got a really down-to-earth demeanor. He hit a hole-in-one at the BMW Championship, I think it was a couple of years ago, to win a BMW, and went out and you know, chest bumped a buddy in the in the gallery, and it was you know, he's just one of those guys that has a lot of charisma, a lot of character. He's right now he's 16th on the Euro Tour. He won the Spanish Open this year. He beat out Sergio and Juice Luton for a really nice win in a big event. He is really accurate off the tee. He's got about a 65, 66% hit percentage for fairways, and he's actually got a 73.3 green on regulation, which makes him the best in the field in terms of green and regulation. So really, really interesting stat there. I think there's a little bit of concern for me knowing that he's coming overseas and hasn't played in a PGA Tour event. We've seen a lot of Euro Tour guys come over and seem really rusty, just not ready to go when they first make the trip overseas and play in the PGA Tour. So there is some concern there, but I think at 6,100 he's worth a flyer. Probably won't be more than 2 or 3% owned in most tournament formats. So I'll probably have something like 8 to 10% of Beef, and we'll hope that his game, as the stats say, suit this course really well, and maybe he can make the cut and possibly rattle off a top 25. Outside of that, guys, I think that's it. If there's any questions, you guys can reach me on Twitter at Brad Messersmith, Messer Smith. You guys can find my work on slurv.com. We're going to be doing expert chats as always. I believe Wednesday at 9:30 Eastern. We'll be doing another GPP expert chat. Really great stuff there. A lot of sharp minds on slurv.com. So make sure you go check out the expert chats there. You can also find my work on DraftKings Playbook. You can just Google the DraftKings Playbook Golf, and I do a love-hate article there every week. And outside of that, guys, make sure you hit me up on Twitter if you do well, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. We'll catch you next time.